Any other wins or lessons learned?
I have a buyer. We just went good, and so we are going forward.
Awesome. Congrats. Anyone else? Okay. So today is a pretty cool day. We're going to go through a lot. Let me just pull up our details. We're going to do this from scratch, which means you get to watch me do it live. What? That's super exciting. We're going to talk about submitting offers and writing contracts. Don't get too excited, guys. All right, so we're going to talk about coaching your buyers through submitting an offer, what terms you need to talk to them about, what you need to do as an agent before submitting the offer, as submitting the offer. This is going to be a two-part series between today and tomorrow. So tomorrow is going to be all about gathering the information up front prior to writing the offer and sending the offer. Tomorrow is going to be all about filling out the offer paperwork and sending it to your customer and then presenting it. So I need a volunteer. Miss Frederick?
Sure.
Sweet. Awesome. Okay, so as volunteer, you get to go on the MLS and find a very nice home that you want to buy, and you will be the buyer. So as she does that, I'm going to lay out the scene. So we just showed her a house, and she says, Ben, this is my dream house. I want to submit an offer. Or in like modern days, she says, I want this house before anyone else gets it. Let's do this now. And we say, perfect. I have your pre-approval on file because obviously I wouldn't be showing you properties if I didn't have a pre-approval on file yet. So let's talk about your offer terms. Before you even discuss the offer terms or the terms of the offer with your buyer, there are some questions that you're going to want to ask the seller and the listing agent. As a group, let's discuss what questions or information do you need to get from the seller or the listing agent prior to submitting an offer?
Age of the roof and HVAC?
Yes.
Okay, I found one.
Sweet. Can you drop the address in the chat?
Sure.
What other questions or information do we need from the listing agent or the seller?
If it has a septic tank, where is it located and when was it last serviced?
Awesome. Learn to spell too. Other?
How many offers do you have currently and when is the seller reviewing?
Are there any preferences for inspection or closing?
Great. Do they want a pre-occupancy, right? I'm sorry, post-occupancy? Or some other questions?
If there have been other, if it's been under contract before and went back on the market, what caused the previous deal to fall apart?
Okay. Pull up our property, because that brings up a good segue. Ooh, Reg Wind, yes. She is bougie, 875, all right. So we want to submit an offer on this property. Let's first, like Lee just mentioned, let's look at the matching property history. And let's look at the history of the property. So obviously it was originally listed in August 19th at $889,000. The listing agent might have agreed to that price just to get the listing because less than 10 days later, they lower it to $875, apparently after not getting so much traffic. The sellers looked like they attempted to sell the house 4 years ago in 2017, where it was originally listed at $719, and then it went back on the market, and then the listing was canceled. So you could ask about that experience if you wanted. But if it was a new listing and then you saw a BOM above that, you would definitely want to ask why the previous deal fell through. And if there was any evidence to inspection issues or financing issues, what caused the previous buyer to leave? And if they say it was because of the inspection, the first thing you want to ask for is the inspection report. What other questions do we want to ask? Now, these are great questions to ask even before you show the home, because these are hopefully questions that your buyers are probably going to ask you when you're at the showing, right? But it's definitely questions, if you didn't do your homework and that you did show the home and the buyer says, I want to submit the offer, these are questions you definitely need prior to writing your offer. What other questions are we missing? One I would add would be the title company.
Type of offers they're accepting.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Type of offers they are accepting.
Yep, you can ask type of offers, like how many offers are on the table. You could also ask the, do you have any offers over X, right? If I say, what's your highest offer on the table, as a listing agent, I'm probably not going to tell you. But if I can ask you a yes or no question, do you have any offers over 850? That's a more innocent question that the listing agent might let slip and say yes or no. Right? I always ask, do you have any offers above list? Right? If I really want to tell the demand on this property, do you have any offers above list? Do you have multiple offers above list? There's no harm in asking these questions because you can ask whatever question you want. The listing agent has the responsibility to disclose or not disclose. And proper listing agents will use that properly. Some of them may respond back to your question and say, I can't tell you that. Down here at the bottom, seller's preferred closing agent. This is why we sometimes have to ask for it. When this section is not filled out, then you definitely want to ask the listing agent for that information so you can fill up the contract once, right? We always want to complete the contract just once, not 20 times. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. So that's why we ask for the preferred title agent. Any questions there? All right. So our buyer says, I want to buy this house. As we're standing in the middle of it, we did our homework. We got this information. So we're telling our buyer. The next thing we immediately do is we inform the listing agent. You want to do this before you even write the offer. Text or call the listing agent. Hey, I have an offer coming to you. Why do I want to do that up front or early on?
So they don't accept another offer without seeing the one that they know you're going to be sending?
Yep. And
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I know sometimes they have like cutoff times. So, like if you don't know exactly, sometimes they'll give you an opportunity to still submit your offer. So it's just good to give them a little heads up.
exactly. You don't want to go back and write your offer and then go to submit it and your sellers are dragging their feet to sign it, or your buyers are dragging their feet to sign it, and then you find out that they already signed something else. The sellers already accepted something else. Right. All right, so that's step 2 after you identified that the offer. Step 3, disclose, disclose, disclose. So disclosures are typically added to the MLS under the attachments. That would be a little paperclip icon. Clicking that icon, you can then download the disclosures and you can review them. So here we have our HOA disclosure. So we'll download that. And if we go back, we can download our seller property disclosure. Now, some of these information is on the seller property disclosure. So a couple things key here, right? So looking at this seller property disclosure, this property has been tenant occupied or is tenant occupied, right? Now, that's a big question to ask because nowhere here does it showcase that it's tenant occupied. And nowhere here does it say it's tenant occupied, which is why you would call the listing agent to get the backstory. Maybe the tenant is still there, maybe they're not, right? The seller has not lived in the property for 4 years, but it's still tenant occupied. That's what this indicates here. So we would want to ask more questions about the tenants and the tenant's experience in the property and when does the tenant move out. The other big thing is page 2 for the seller property disclosure. For the residential ones, we have the age of the roof, right? So if this isn't completed, that's why you want to ask. And then we have some HOA rules and HOA restrictions. So at the same time, specifically, right, when you are looking through this offer paperwork and you are looking through this disclosures, and you look at the HOA disclosure and it's a big one like this where it says, oh, you're paying $524 a quarter. You are going to want to make sure you get the HOA rules and regulations and covenants for your buyers. And that was a question we missed. Now you can do that after the property goes under contract. I would highly recommend just asking for it up front. It exhausts me when listing agents say, oh, we don't have it. Then my immediate response is then tell the seller to go get it. Or if they say the HOA management company's contact information is on the HOA disclosure, right? So if you reach out to the listing agent and you say, can you please send me the HOA rules and regulations, the covenants, the financials, and the declarations, and they say the HOA management company is on the HOA disclosure, you then schedule an email to go back to the to go to the listing agent. You schedule an email just an hour later to go back to the listing agent and you say, Unfortunately, the HOA management company will not provide me any docs because I'm not an owner of a property in this neighborhood. Can you please request the seller to request these documents? And then you just repeat what you asked for the first time. And don't waste your time reaching out to the HOA management company. You can, but I've never had an HOA management company provide me, a buyer's agent, HOA rules and regulations for a community that I do not live in, which is why it frustrates me when listing agents don't have that information on file, because they should, right? And as a part of our listing process, one of the steps is to get the HOA rules and regulations, covenants, and financials from the seller, because HOA management companies don't give it out regularly just to buyers. Huge thing to look at is these payments and fees. Obviously, you want to advise your buyer of this, right? So these are one-time fees. This neighborhood is expensive and bougie, so we do have a capital contribution fee of $1,572. That's $1,572. That is typically due at closing, which will be charged to the buyer, right? So this is why we disclose up front. And you're going to want to do that prior to writing the offer, because can't type and talk at the same time, because maybe your buyer is going to see that and say, no, we don't want to write an offer anymore, right? Don't waste your time writing an offer and then giving the disclosures to your customer and them saying, oh, the roof is 20 years old, now we're going to pass, right? That's why there's very specific steps here, and in order we do that. Now, how do you send this? Pretty simple. Use conventions. So you are sending disclosures to the customer in your CRM or here. You can write property address, disclosures, and docs. Seller, please see the attach. And then you just attach everything. It's that simple. Now, I always recommend sending disclosures and documents to your customer as an attachment to an email prior to sending it for digital signatures. A lot of the digital signature platforms are great, but majority of them, you can't really read a document on a phone, right? So if I'm a seller and I'm away from my computer and I want to review documents on my phone, it's a lot easier to do it as an attachment to an email instead of through a DocuSign or through DigiSign. So heads up there. All right, any questions about that?
Yes. Really quickly about the seller property disclosure. I see every now and then I'll pull up a seller property disclosure and it will be a more of a disclosure of non-occupancy. Like the seller has never occupied this property, so we have no idea how old the roof is. We have no idea how old the HVAC or the water heater is. So I guess in that situation, it would be just left up to the buyer and the buyer's agent to verify that information independently.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. You will see that very common between investment properties or open door properties, where they're acquiring the property really fast and reselling it, and they're not disclosing anything. So at that point in time, you're going to want to pull permits and look at permit history. And obviously your buyer is going to want to do an inspection. All right, terms of the offer. So when we go to write an offer, there's quite a few terms that we have to discuss with our buyer. Obviously, one of the big ones, most important, is purchase price. What does the buyer want to go in at, right? Are they purchasing the property at list price? Do they want to go under? Do they think it's worth it? So on and so forth. Obviously, the buyer is going to rely on you and your expert as a buyer's agent to give them a recommendation as to what they should submit a purchase price decision on. So this would be a time where you would take a step back and you would do a CMA, right? You can do a quick CMA. If they say, well, is this pretty high for the neighborhood? Okay, well, let me actually send you this. Let me send you everything in the neighborhood. So you can see what your your future neighbor houses are selling for. I'm gonna send you everything in the estates at Windermere. Super fast, not really a CMA, but providing data to them so that they can make a decision. Now, this is one thing, if you know that they like this property, especially if it's this customer, right? If you have a customer that's shopping $500,000 or above, you should be looking at all the listings in that neighborhood prior to doing the showing. Because if you walk into this house and they're buying for close to 900,000, they're probably going to ask you at the house, because those people make decisions fast sometimes. And they'll be like, well, how does this house compare to the neighbors? And if you said, oh, I haven't looked at any listings in the neighborhood, shame on you, right? So do your homework beforehand, especially if you know your buyers are leaning toward one property or the other. But you want to help them determine a price, so you can do a CMA. You can do a full-blown CMA. You can send them the properties from the neighborhood, and you can help them determine if this is a fair price or not, right? The other thing, what's the other thing that affects the price besides just the neighborhood?
Appraisal? No.
Appraisal does, but when I'm choosing a price to submit,
Other offers on the table?
competition, other offers on the table, right? Which is why we go back up to step one. So we determine, we talk to the listing agent and we talk to the seller and they say, I'm sorry, we talk to the listing agent, they say there's no offers on the table. We've had no traffic in the last 12 days. That's why we lowered the price from $889 to $875. You know, my sellers do want to sell, but they don't want to get robbed. But the listing agent says, I know it's kind of, you know, high for the neighborhood since, you know, it's only a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, and it's only 3,200 square feet. And, you know, 2 larger ones, or the 4,400 one sold is under contract for $750. And when we talk to our seller, and our seller says, you know what? Okay, let's make an offer. We're gonna make an offer. We want to do $825. Say, okay, cool, fantastic. Let's talk about the next term. Next term, deposit. What is a traditional deposit that we recommend?
1% of the purchase price.
Yes, 1% of the purchase price. That is the bare minimum. That is a not strong offer. So what do you recommend? Depends on competition. Are there other offers on the table? It also depends on what your seller is comfortable with. I'm sorry, what your buyer is comfortable with, right? So my buyer is, this is a jumbo loan. They're putting down 20%. So they have $160,000 sitting someplace, obviously. So deposit wise, I say, well, your minimum is actually 1% to 2%. So that's 8 to 16,000. They say, okay, let's just do 20, right? Or say, let's say on the flip coin, this is a super competitive listing, right? There's already 4 offers on the table. They want to be competitive. Then I might recommend, let's do 3%. 3% of 800,000, 3 times 8 is 24,000, 25,000, right? Maybe I want to split that up. Here's an option that people don't typically think of. Let's do an additional deposit, right? My buyer says, we want to go in strong, but we're concerned about the inspection because, you know, the roof is old, or because they provided no information on the pool, or let's say it's Lee's situation. They provided no seller disclosure. Then I could say, okay, let's do this. Let's do 10,000 up front at the time of signing the contract. This is going to be due in 2 to 3 business days. Hey, buyer, you're going to have to wire the deposit to the title company. And you guys set the standard, right? Do they have to wire it? No, they could write a check. Could they take a money order? Yeah, they could do that too. But give them the easiest option, wire it. If they say, I have never done a wire before, or if your buyer said, how do you do a wire? Then you can say, you can call the title company. They'll give you the wiring instructions. If you're uncomfortable submitting a wire for your deposit, then you can probably drop off a personal check or drop off a money order to the title company. But typically we prefer wires. Now, I don't care. Title company doesn't care, but I'm lowering the amount of choices for our customer so that if we make it easier for them, keep their scope narrow. So my buyers are super comfortable with a $10,000 deposit up front. And then let's say, because we're concerned about the inspection, we are going to do an additional deposit. This additional deposit is going to really cement everything. So we're going to do a $40,000 additional deposit 10 days after effective date. Someone tell me, what is an effective date?
The date that the sellers execute.
Yes, that's half of it.
The date that both parties sign.
And gets delivered back.
Yes, that's the part we were missing. It's the date that both parties sign and gets delivered back. Receipt is confirmed. So 10 days after the effective date, we'll do another $40,000 deposit. That's going to be due then. So in that sense, we may make our inspection period 10 days. The bigger the house, the longer your inspection period should be. Why? It takes a lot more time to inspect a 4,000 square foot house than a 1,000 square foot house, right? Inspectors will charge more because it takes more time. You may need multiple inspectors out there, right? So let's talk about it. I'm talking to my buyer. Hey, we're going to have 10 days for your inspection period. You know, this property does have a pool. Says that the pool pump is new, but it was purchased in the last 3 to 5 years. I would still recommend having a pool inspector go out there. Would you be okay with that? Yes. Okay, cool. This property is on septic tank. Hey, my buyer, I would recommend that you get a septic tank inspection done. The seller has not occupied this property in the last 4 years. It's been occupied by tenants. God knows how many people have lived in the property. So I think you should plan on getting a septic tank inspection done as well. Those can range from $400 to $600. Hey buyer, there's a well. I think you should get a well water test done or confirm what the well is. Is the well for irrigation or is the well for drinking water? Sometimes there's city water for drinking water and then the irrigation water is on a well. Very common. Next term, expiration. What could affect what you set the expiration as?
When is the deadline that they tell you?
Yes. When is the deadline that they tell you? You reach out to the listing agent. Hey, that question up here. How many offers are on the table? They say 4. What is your deadline to submit? They say today at 5 p.m. Okay. When is the seller making a decision? Tomorrow morning. Oh, okay. Do you think you'll have it back to us by tomorrow night? Yes. Then I want to make the expiration tomorrow night. Typically, we do 24 hours, but in the situations where there's a deadline, or they may say, I've seen on some listings, and guys, this is typically in the realtor remarks down here, right? I've seen in some realtor remarks, they say sellers are out of state or out of country. Please allow 48 hours or 62 hours. I'm lazy. I'm a very lazy listing agent. So I always put in my realtor remarks, please allow 72 hours for us to respond. That's just because I like to take my time and drag my feet so I can get another offer. Expiration. So 24 hours is typical. That would be the expiration date / time. You can write a time in here. So one way you could do it is you could do 9/2/2020 by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. It doesn't always just have to be a date. We'll go through. We're going to take these terms and we're going to write the offer tomorrow. Closing date. What are your closing date options?
It depends on if it's, I mean, in this case, it's a financed offer.
You stop
so-
answering all the questions.
I'm sorry. Somebody else answer.
Well, isn't that would be a question you would ask the listing agent, you know, like how long do they need typically?
Yep. That would affect it.
Sometimes they're like 30, sometimes they're like my seller needs more time because they're occupied, so 45 days, just depends.
That's one facet. So that the seller affects your closing date. What's the other thing that affects your closing date?
The lender.
Yes, Jesse, I'm the lender. So closing date can be based on seller's request, right? Maybe the seller hasn't done their house shopping yet. Maybe they want 60 days to find their next house, right? That's why you ask it up here. Is there any preference for, whoa, that was cool. There we go. Sorry. Is there any, wrong short code. Is there any preference for inspection date or closing date? The other things, loans, right? So let's go through this. Cash can close as quickly as 14 days. If there's no HOA, if there's an HOA, I would do a little bit longer. Why would I do longer if there's an HOA?
Because of the estoppel.
Yes, because the estoppel. So estoppels can take sometimes 10 business days to get back, right? Or if there's two estoppels, those are fun. Or if it's a condo, right? Because then you need a condo association approval, right? If condo. Conventional, typically you can be done in 30 days, depends on your lender. Some lenders can do much faster. FHA, you want to probably book 40 days because FHA appraisers take a while. VA, you definitely want to book 40 to 45 days. And guys, these are conservative numbers. So I give you these as guidelines, but you're going to ask your lender or the buyer's lender what their expectations are, right? And if your buyer's lender is not a lender you work with, and they say, oh, I need 60 days to close this loan, then you tell your buyer that their offer is less attractive because the seller wants to close by the end of September, and the buyer's lender is saying they need until the end of October. And then you recommend a different lender. So cash can close in 14 days, longer if there's an HOA, estoppel, or condo association, also known as a COA, condo ownership association. Yeah, that sounds right. And conventional, 30 days FHA, 45 VA 45. Inspection period, we already set to 10 days. If you leave it blank, it's 15 on the contract by default. Any questions about inspection periods? No, cool. Financing period. This financing period, you're probably going to want it to match, which by the way is also called loan approval period. You're probably going to want to match close to your time to your closing date. Let's say the seller comes back, we need 60 days and it's a conventional loan. Then do you need 60 days to qualify for conventional? No, you probably only need 30. One thing we don't talk about a lot in this market is home warranties. There is a spot on the contract for you to ask for a home warranty. Sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes you don't. The home warranty section has three things. Who is it paid by? Which company? And budget. So it's written as up to a certain amount. So you could determine if you want to pay for the home warranty for your customer, or if this was a different market, like 2 years ago, then we may be asking for the seller to buy a home warranty. And we may negotiate that and we may put it into our contracts. Typically, we don't do that as much now. And last but not least, appraisal contingency. So the appraisal contingency is not always required on the contract. If your buyer is getting financing, the lender will do an appraisal no matter what. Some lenders will waive the appraisal. How they do that, or the times that they do that when they waive appraisal, is if your borrower is putting down 20% or more. Your borrower is putting down 20% or more, the lender may submit the loan to DU, which is direct underwriting, and the automated underwriting system, whether it's built with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, may come back and say, oh, this is approved. We don't even need an appraisal. It happened 2 deals out of this last year, out of 62. So it's very uncommon, but the buyers typically have to be putting down 20% or more for the appraisal to be waived. If it's waived by the lender, that means they don't pay for it. They don't order it. It's not an expense to the buyer. So your buyer is probably going to be like, why are they waiving the appraisal? Well, the reason is there's enough recent sales in the area that support the purchase price that the lender has determined that there's no risk relating to the appraisal or no risk relating to the value of the purchase price. Can your buyers pay for an appraisal and have one done still? Yes, if they want to waste the money. But there's really no reason to, right? Save the $500–600 and they can just continue through the contract. If you do have the appraisal contingency a part of your contract, you're going to have 2 terms on the appraisal contingency. One is the date that the appraisal is due by. So for this contract, which we're going to write this all together tomorrow, we're going to say that the date is 15 days prior to effective date or prior to closing. And we're going to say we're going to do an appraisal gap, right? So there's a couple ways to do an appraisal gap. One, which I don't recommend because it's not very clear, but we'll do both. One is on the appraisal contingency. So say our purchase price is, that our offer price is $825, and my buyers are willing to pay $10,000 above appraisal. Then on my appraisal contingency, I can put the appraised price as 815, which means my buyers have the right to cancel if the appraised value is 815 or lower. If they don't, if it's 815 or higher, right, then they don't have the right to cancel. That is one way to simulate an appraisal cap. The other is to put it in additional terms. Additional terms is a little bit clearer to the listing agent and the seller, and it would read something like, buyer will pay $10,000 or $10 million above appraised value up to, whoops, up to, buyer will pay up to $10,000 above appraised value up to purchase price. We have another method of writing this, which is a little bit more clear, which we'll go through. All right, questions. Is this helpful at all? Are you guys learning anything?
This is very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. I have a buyer who's gotten approved with down payment assistance, but they won't let them go above appraised. They don't have the cash. And you know, with down payment assistance, your financing or whatever, that period has to be a little longer. So do you have any suggestions on how we can make our offers look appealing to a seller? Because I feel like my hands are tied here.
Yeah, that's a good segue, actually. So making your offer more appealing. So one option would be waiving the inspection period. You know, if you guys walk through the house and you feel comfortable that there's not any huge major defect in the property, then you could suggest it, or just not suggest it, but just say, hey, this is an option you could consider. Right. Yes.
So does that make you like, that has happened with me with a client recently where we went to a property and they had an inspection done a month before, and they were willing to provide us the inspection like report. And I told my seller that, I mean, my buyer, sorry. And I kind of suggested like, hey, you know, like if the report came back and it's great, we could kind of, you know, skip that. And I felt like a bad person by saying it. And I think he thought I was kind of like, he's like, no, we don't ever want to do that. So.
Yeah, so it's something that I don't always recommend. Like, let me phrase it this way. I don't recommend skipping an inspection. I always recommend doing an inspection. Now, what I will mention to certain buyers is that you can waive the inspection contingency. So the buyers can, even though you waive the inspection contingency, and I only mention it so that they know it's an option. I don't always put a lot of pressure on it or suggest it. But if you waive the inspection contingency, you can still do an inspection. Same thing as waiving the appraisal, right? We waive the appraisal contingency, but we still do appraisals, right? So waiving the inspection contingency just means that the buyer cannot cancel for inspection reasons. Now, your example, I think, is a very, very, gives you a stronger case as in the negotiations to waive the inspection contingency, right? If the sellers provided an inspection report that was recently done and you have it prior to submitting the offer, then, you know, I would feel pretty confident that you could waive the inspection contingency, assuming that that report was pretty thorough and provided you, you know, accurate information or seemingly accurate information. You could still do an inspection after the fact and make sure everything, you know, is working the way it is, right? And it all depends on competitiveness. And I'm about to show you guys the most competitive offer I wrote, which was kind of nuts. Is this the final one? No, it's not even the final one. Oh yeah, it is. And then going back to Angelica's question though, how do you make it more, you know, appealing? Really they're the highest deposit that they can do, right? Because that's appealing to me as a listing agent. It makes it harder for you to walk away. You know, waiving or removing the inspection period, shortening timelines as much as you can. Down payment assistance is incredibly tricky to be competitive in this market. Another method, unfortunately, if they have cash or they don't, is they can you know, put money toward the seller's closing costs. All right, let's talk about some crazy stuff. So one thing we didn't mention on here is escalation clause, right? So super competitive market, super competitive property. Two things you can do: have your buyers write a letter to the sellers, or let them know that they can, and see if they do. 2, escalation clause. Right, so escalation clause ensures that your offer is the highest offer on the table up to a cap. We determine an increment and a cap. Make sure you explain this to your buyers, how this works. So if there's an offer on the table, let's go back to our example. Our purchase price is $825. Our buyers say we're willing to escalate up to $850. Okay, then our cap, sorry, not on our own, our cap would be $850. And then our increment, we would probably do $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000, right? Which means we're going to escalate above the higher offer on the table. The seller shall provide a copy of the competing offer. If the escalation clause goes into effect, what typically happens is the seller will cross out the purchase price, put the new purchase price, what your offer escalated to, send that back to you with initials next to it, send a copy of the competing offer, and then your buyer has the option to initial buy that change and move forward, or not initial and walk away. So that's key. An escalation clause is not committal. Your buyer still has an out because the change on the contract to what the new escalated price is and the evidence of that's causing that escalation has to be provided to the buyer. Then the buyer has the choice: do I accept that escalation, right? Do I accept that this offer went up to my cap, and do I initial buy that change, or do I walk away? Does that make sense? Crazy stuff number 2. This is the craziest offer I ever wrote. The list price was $485. We went up to $530. We waived the inspection period. You waived the inspection period by putting 0 in the inspection. And last but not least, we did an appraisal gap. Buyer will pay up to $41,000 above appraised value up to the purchase price. We also gave the seller $5,000 in closing costs and prepaids. The buyer paid $5,000 toward the seller's closing costs and prepaids. That's the most competitive offer I've ever written. Oh, I forgot.
Did they get the house?
They did get the house.
Okay.
I forgot. We also did a post-occupancy agreement. And in the post-occupancy agreement, we said the buyer would pay for a lease agreement for the seller to live in the property and remain in possession of the property 30 days after closing, and the seller would pay 0. How attractive is that offer?
Very attractive.
Right? There's going to be some good pool parties at that house.
Do you think it was personally worth that much? That house?
The best part about this situation is, even though it was listed at $485, it appraised at $530,
Oh, wow.
which was shocking. So I was pretty happy that we got it done. So, all right. So I think that covers everything for today. We talked about the questions you need to ask your seller and listing agent before submitting an offer, the disclosures that you need to review, and then the terms and the type of conversation to have with your customer when you're putting together that offer and explaining these items. Do you guys have any questions about this? And was this helpful?
This was very helpful.
So tomorrow we are going to continue this conversation. We're going to take the terms for this offer, and we are going to write the offer together for Ridgewind Way. So join in tomorrow at 9 o'clock. We're going to download everything, upload it to Form Simplicity or Transaction Desk. I haven't made a decision yet, and I'm going to show you exactly how to set up the programs, fill out the forms, and we're going to email them to our buyer for her to sign them. So if you guys have any questions, stay on. Otherwise, I will see you all tomorrow.